Hello everybody and welcome back to another build on Spellsland. Today we are looking at what I'm calling Goblin Aristocrats, and sometimes I like to go to NPG Goldfish and check out the new decks and what people are playing, and I saw this deck. It was just labeled Goblins, but it was black and red, which I thought was interesting, so I clicked on it, and it has two 5-0 finishes by the same person, Aokis, A-O-K-I-S, and what interests me about this is not only that it's a successful list in leagues, but that it's just right on my alley in terms of what I like in Magic. It's sacrificing creatures, it's playing goblins, and it can play a controlling game or a longer game. It can also play a fast game. So really, really interesting deck where you have to choose your role as you're playing, which is really fun. In terms of the sacrifice outlets, the aristocrats, if you will, most of them are goblins. We've got Goblin Chirurgeon here, or I guess you could call him Goblin Chirurgeon, but this is just the French word for surgeon, chirurgien, which, I mean, I don't know why in Fallen Empires they decided to use chirurgeon, but I'm just going to call him Goblin Surgeon, because that's really what it is. It's a 1-mana 0/2, interesting stats. You can sack a goblin to regenerate any creature, which is really powerful. We've got 1 Mog Sledder and 1 Mog Raider. They do the exact same thing, just this one has funnier art. You can sack a goblin and give any creature +1/+1 until end of turn. We've got Skirk Prospector 3 times. You get to sack a goblin to add a red mana to your mana pool. It's a 1-mana 1/1. And then we've got a couple payoffs. We've got a Mortician Beetle. I was going to say Goblin Mortician. No, Goblin... It's a Mortician Beetle. It's a 1-mana 1/1. And whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Mortician Beetle. So with all of our sacrificing goblins, this becomes a very, very big Beetle very, very quickly. We've also got Falkenrath Noble, recent downgrade, 4-mana 2/2 flyer. Whenever it or another creature dies, even your opponent's creatures, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it gives you a lot of staying power. It can also be used as a finisher later on. It's a 2-mana flyer, which is not negligible in some matchups, and you can kind of run it out quickly with Skirk Prospector if you need to. In terms of getting everything set up and having some creatures to sacrifice, well, we've got 4 Mog War Marshals here, 2-mana 1/1 that makes 3 bodies, basically. It works very well. Usually you don't want to pay the echo cost and you kind of want to sacrifice it to something else on your upkeep or on the same turn or something. It's one of my favorite cards of all time. Really, really powerful. And we've also got Goblin Matron here. It's a Goblin Tutor. You've probably seen me play this card a lot if you've been here on the channel for a while. I play it in my... Matron control deck, which, you know, is the namesake card, is this card. So really, really powerful card that I'm very experienced in playing. In terms of what she can fetch, all the goblins plus this Warren Weirding, which is a goblin card. One of my favorite cards as well, 2-mana sorcery tribal goblin, and you get it's an edict effect. You can make someone sacrifice a creature, but you can also target yourself, which is actually something that you might want to do from time to time to get 2 extra goblins in play and get more sacrifice fodder. Or if you and for Mortician Beetle, this is any player that can sacrifice a creature, so you can actually just play it on the opponent. They sacrifice a creature, it grows the Mortician Beetle, they have 1 less blocker, etc. Think get, you know, spiral out of control very, very quickly. And we've also got Salvak Lifestaff here. We can equip it to any of our little goblins that we want to sacrifice, or we can attach it to chump blockers or anything that we think is going to die or that is going to die, and we can gain a bunch of life, or we can attack for an extra power. It's a very, very nice card to have. Aside from that, for removal, we have some Sparksmiths. It's a 2-mana 1/1, really underrated card, so powerful. You just tap it, and it deals X damage to a creature and X damage to you, where X is the number of goblins on the battlefield. So it counts your opponent's goblins as well, if that's ever relevant, really. But with this deck, you can really control the number of goblins that you have in play at once, so you can really kind of cater your removal to take as little damage as possible, and then hopefully gain it back with Falkenrath Noble and Salvak Lifestaff. We've also got 1 Terminate, as well as our Weirding, and 4 Lightning Bolts, which is always welcome in most red decks. And that pretty much sums up the main deck. We've also got 1 single copy of Reaping the Graves, which is really interesting because you can do some really cool stuff with this. You can, you know, sack a bunch of stuff to Skirk Prospector, and then play a bunch of spells like Falkenrath Noble and a Sparksmith and a Terminate and something, and then you've got like 2 or 3 spells. You can Reaping the Graves, get a bunch of cards back from your library, from your graveyard, and then recast them again with Prospector mana. Things can get really out of control quickly with a card like Reaping the Graves. In terms of our mana, we've got 3 Ash Barrens, 4 Bloodfell Caves, 1 Bojuka Bog, 3 Great Furnace, and 1 Vault of Whispers, which we'll get back to in a moment. We've got a couple mountains. We've got 2 Carnariums, 2 Swamps, In the sideboard, we've got one copy of Bladebrand. We've got a lot of cards in our sideboard that deal damage, that are creatures that deal damage to all other creatures or to all creatures. And so with Bladebrand, it's just kind of like a wombo combo where you can, with minimal investment, wipe the board. And it's also useful as just a removal spell. You can use it to block a Nuvox Crusher or whatever and get a lot of damage in. You can also use it with your Sparksmith when he's the only goblin on the battlefield and you want to kill something big. This, turns out to be a pretty good card in our deck, and it also cantrips. We've got an extra Warren Weirding, we've got 2 extra Reaping the Graves, we've got 1 Elect Trickery, we've got a Gorilla Shaman, Martyr of Ashes, again, one of those cards that works really well with Bladebrand. And this is the reason why we have our artifact lands in the deck. And something that I think I'm going to change in the future. We're going to have to see how it is. There's a lot of pros and cons to running this card in your deck. Because we don't run many artifacts to begin with, Aeokis, I guess, decided to run some artifact lands to make it worth it. You can sacrifice the Cyber Lifestaff. Obviously, you don't always want to do that, but it's something that you can do and couple it with Bladebrand, and you can do a lot of damage. And the main reason why they're playing this is because it's fetchable with Goblin Matron, whereas something like Martyr of Ashes with all the red cards that we run is usually preferable, I guess. It's just that this is a fetchable removal spell. So I don't know if it's worth investing into artifact lands and having those in play and having them be a risk for removal just to have this one removal spell that's fetchable. I'm not sure if that's worth it. Especially if you're playing something like Burn, they're definitely going to be bringing in artifact destruction because you're running Savik Lifestaff, and then being able to hit your lands is just gravy after that. Okay, moving on. We've got 3 copies of Pyroblast, 1 copy of Flaring Pain for Circles of Protection and Fogs, etc. We've got another Goblin Matron target that I'm not too fond of here. It's a 2-mana 1/2 Goblin Tinkerer. You pay a red and tap it to destroy an artifact, and then if it costs 1 or less, you're fine. This thing's going to survive, but if you hit like a Mirror Enforcer or a Frogmite or even a Prophetic Prison, this thing kills itself, which is not the greatest. I'm not sure if it's worth running this again. I understand that it's a Goblin Matron target, but I don't feel like it's that good. And might just be worth running more of something else to kill artifacts, like another Gorilla Shaman. Just like I would think maybe Krark-Clan Shaman could be another Martyr of Ashes easily, right? I guess they kind of you can see that they split these things up into 2 pairs. Maybe this is just a way to explore the options and see if it's worth it with Goblin Matron. I'm not sure that it is, honestly. And to top things off, we've got 2 Relics of Progenitus, another thing that we could sacrifice to Krark-Clan Shaman, I guess, but also good against graveyard-based strategies. So that's Goblin Aristocrats, guys. I'm super stoked to be playing this deck. This is like one of my favorite strategies of all time into a package that I really like, so I'm pretty excited. I hope you guys are too, so we'll see you in the games.